You're all set. Have a good meeting.
Thank you. Okay. Jen, we're good. Josh, we're good, I think. Okay, welcome to the November, what are we tonight? 25th meeting of Scituate Conservation Commission. Got to read a couple of quick things here. This meeting is being held virtually as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 21, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Scituate in accordance with the open meeting law. And the town of Scituate Conservation Commission is committed to providing an environment of respect during our meetings. We ask all members to interact in a polite manner, even when there's disagreement. We value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcome and respected. And we ask our committee members and all that participate to commit to these standards and to support and respect our community. That said, we have an agenda. Is there any additions or changes to this agenda? Anybody want to add anything to it?
No, I just need to speak at the open space. I need Eric to help me too, please.
Okay. We got that on the list, and
Yeah.
I think if that's good,
Okay,
then I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to accept the agenda.
Oh, do we have, I'm sorry, Jen, do we have it in here for the commission members? Do we need to vote that Driftway expenditure?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes.
So we'll just vote on the Driftway Park maintenance.
Yes.
Good. So those two things, Penny.
Yeah, I make a motion, we accept the agenda with an add-on of the Driftway Park and a little bit on Mordecai Lincoln.
Okay, that's a motion from Penny. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
From Brendan. All in favor?
Eric?
Eric
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Great. So we want to roll into the hearings.
Let's go, quick.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else, Jen, you want to do first?
No, 9 Collier is continued, and we have Greg Morse, I assume, to present the amendment for 9 Collier.
Good evening, this is Greg.
Morning, evening, Greg.
Hi. Good to go?
Yep.
Great. So for the record, Greg Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering, representing the property owner and applicants, Frank and Kathy Nelson. This is a notice of intent that we had filed last year for a new single-family home, 9 Collier Road. What puts us before you tonight is a request for an amendment. We've submitted a letter and a revised plan to the commission detailing what the changes are. Looking at the plan here, you'll see that we made a slight revision to the building footprint along the eastern side of it where the proposed porch is, along the back of the building. But then on the north side of the building, we decided, or we're proposing to use that space a little bit differently than what was approved. There was a patio in a portion of that area, and it came to our attention that the bank on the abutting property, the Hayes property, on the original approved plan had been altered through a permit with the Conservation Commission to where you see the bank depicted now, and that was issued an order of conditions and a certificate of compliance as part of when that house was built. It altered the buffer zone in the bank on that northern side of our house. That allows us a little bit of extra room outside of the 50-foot buffer zone where we've proposed a plunge pool in a small shed to be constructed on the property. This is all area that is existing lawn surface. The proposed work with one exception, is no closer than what was approved when the home project was approved. The one exception is along that northern lot line between this property and the Hayes property to the north. The applicant's proposing to construct a picket fence. It would be an open slat fence along the property line. There are similar fences on the abutting properties that run basically from the top of the coastal bank landward. So I'm going to turn it over to you for questions or comments.
Thank you, Greg. Jen?
I did look at the certificate of compliance for the project next door, and that all that's what we have documented for there. The fence, I assume, is needed also because of the pool, and some of the hedge might be affected by that in installing it. Otherwise, Deb Keller did do a review of this when they initially filed it to make sure everything worked with the stormwater permit. And so she was good with that.
All right. Brendan?
I don't have anything at the moment.
Okay. We can
Yeah.
circle around.
Okay, thanks.
Penny?
Yeah, I just have one quick question. The proposed generator, why can't that go on the other side of the equipment shed out of the 50-foot buffer?
Sure. It was a request during the zoning board meeting to keep that generator greater than 50 feet from that property line between us and the Hayes property. Not that northern lot line, but the one that's
Oh, all
between
right.
the two houses.
Yeah,
So that's why.
okay, I guess. Okay, I'm
Um,
good, Frank.
okay. Eric? Thanks, Penny.
Um, yeah, I think my eye was only caught by the generator location. And I guess maybe one further question on that is, unless I'm missing it, and I apologize if I am, what's the foundation of that? You know, is the generator sitting on a poured concrete pad? And if so, is there any sort of, what's the excavation for that pad construction? And then further to the location, the trenching that's going to be required for the utility access to the house, you know, the spec on that.
Sure. So underneath the generator itself will either be, you know, a 4 to 6 inch deep concrete pad, or would be crushed stone. The generator would essentially be sitting on the ground on one of those two surfaces. The electric and gas line, you know, for that generator would be outside the 50-foot, would also run from the house to where the proposed pool equipment is. So it would be running on the landward side of the pool to get to the pool equipment and to get to the generator location.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anybody in the audience for this?
We do have one hand raised.
Okay.
All right, Jeff DeLisi, I'm unmuting you.
Thank you so much. Jeff DeLisi, Orenberger, DeLisi, and Harris. Just quickly about the generator. I happen to represent the Hayeses. I didn't even expect to be commenting on tonight's application. Generally speaking, the Hayeses don't have any issues. With respect to the generator, I think that was a condition of approval of the zoning board, and I'm fairly certain that both the Hayeses and the property owners at 9 Collier are speaking with one another, and it might result in a mutual agreement to move the generator to a
Yeah.
different location. That's not before the board now, but I just wanted to mention it. That's all.
So I don't, Jeff, you're saying the generator still might be want to be located in a different location?
It's possible. I know that's not before the commission now, but it's something that is being discussed between the parties as something that might be an accommodation that the property owner of 9 Collier may make for my client. That's not yet the case, but I wanted to mention it because I do note that the generator is located where it is, and there might be an opportunity in the future to move it, and I just wanted to mention it. That's all.
All right, well, we're accepting it where it is for now,
Yep.
or maybe we get a vote for that. Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Yep.
Greg, can you just explain to me the change in the coastal bank or what what moved?
Sure. This is in the northeast corner of our property, where we abut the coastal bank and the Hayes property.
Mhm.
We had shown the coastal bank originally on the original design a little bit further inland, not on our site, but on the Hayes property. And from what we found out through doing research was that when the Hayes property was altered or improved, that there was a coastal bank um, restoration and enhancement project as part of that. So we got a copy of the as-built plan that was done with that, which clearly defines where that top of limit of bank on that property is. You know, it was off locus for us, so we were relying on some LiDAR data to determine the topography. But based on the as-built survey that was done and the certificate of compliance that was issued by this commission in 2001, that bank on the Hayes property moved seaward a couple feet from where we originally had it, based on the aerial topography we used.
Right. And where you're calling out, you have the plunge pool, shed, and then equipment. I'm assuming that that's a pump and heater and stuff for the plunge pool.
Correct.
Okay.
So for what it's worth, if I just a reminder, the original permanent project was the house, everything that's there in gray, and then there was a patio. Can't quite see what's there now. I mean, where the patio is currently, it was just a little bit of a different shape. So the pool, the spa, the shed, the equipment are new, are part
Okay.
of the amendment.
So
And
before
the fence.
before the plunge pool and spa shed stuff, that was going to be grass.
Part of it was going to be a patio, and part of it was just going to be landscape grass. This amendment slightly increases the impervious area. What had been approved was 3,780 square feet. This bumps that up to 3,998. So it's a little over 200 square feet of a increase.
Okay. Was any mitigation? It's been a while, to be honest with you. I don't remember a lot. Was there any mitigation or planting or anything offered with this project or request required?
No, not with the order of conditions.
So right now it's currently a lawn surface, essentially up to the top of coastal bank. The top of coastal bank is well vegetated, Rosa rugosa mostly. Um, you know, the Nelsons, when they finish off the project, are certainly going to be adding additional plants on the property, but there were no additional plantings as approved mitigation, no.
So, but now we're adding, I don't know how, I didn't look at the sheet to see how many square feet, we're adding impervious.
It was a little over 200.
200
feet.
additional square feet. And the
Correct.
original square footage, I'm just trying to remember when we discussed all this. There was existing square footage with the house, the existing house, and the existing deck, the garage and slab. I'm just looking at the plan real quick.
So the mitigation that was, put in to offset that increase was mostly stormwater mitigation as opposed to vegetative mitigation. The original house was 2,356 square feet versus we're going up to, 3,998. With the proposal, we had proposed off the back of the house, subsurface infiltration systems, and then under the driveway doing subsurface infiltration systems.
Right.
And those are what your agent, mentioned that Deb Keller from Merrill had done the review of that stormwater permit as part of this.
Okay. I mean, it's not a lot of addition, but it is pretty much filling out that whole lot. I'm just wondering if there can be some sort of area that could be, to Jen's point, now you're gonna have to rip up the shrubs or hedges to put in a fence. So that's all gonna get disturbed, right? I mean, you can't build a fence in the middle of a hedgerow.
No, we were proposing to trim back the hedges up to the lot line basically, and then install the fence along the property line.
So there's a removal of part of that vegetation.
Yes.
So, I don't know, Jen or any members, what about adding? I'm sure they don't want anything high because it's going to impact their view, but low plantings or something and an edging along right now, is it grass that goes right to the edge of the top of Coastal Bank? I see some.
Essentially, yes, grass. Yep.
Eric or Brendan?
Yeah. I am curious because the removal of, vegetation from that hedgerow, via pruning or otherwise, there might be health impacts to that hedgerow after the fence is installed. And just looking at the near map image, most recent one taken on the 12th of October, does appear like there is a other planting bed in front of that hedgerow. I'm just wondering that planting space will also be impacted by this. So further vegetation on the site will also be removed, I presume, by the construction of the newly proposed equipment and shed space. So I agree with Frank in that maybe there could be other vegetative mitigation proposed on site, especially if there are negative impacts to the long-term health of that hedgerow. If there is severe pruning of the above ground vegetation and potential root zone impacts with holes being dug for posts for that fence.
So it is the applicant's, desire obviously to landscape the back of this backyard. I'm sure we could incorporate, some native plantings either along that hedge line or along the top of the coastal bank and incorporate that into the landscape plans as they're developed. I don't think they've been fully designed and established at this point in time. But if they can, supplement, if you were to approve this with a, just a supplemental condition that we would provide a planting list in an area equal to, it's 218 square feet of additional impervious along those areas, we certainly can do that as we move forward.
Yeah, I think that'd be appreciated, especially with a native plant palette being proposed. Thanks, Craig.
Yeah.
Ken, how do you want that to, can you work that into one of the orders, do you think?
Yes, we can put that into one of the orders. If they want to send us a plan, maybe with just highlighting an area in the next day or so, that would be helpful. But otherwise, we can put a condition in of so many square feet.
Of natives.
Either of of native vegetation in this particular area. I assume we would want it on that, or there is another hand raised of somebody involved in the project if we want to hear from him.
Okay.
So I'm going to unmute Brian, and I just also want to add that it's almost 6:30. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to point out that,
Who have we got on the?
sorry, this is Brian Greenberg, the contractor. I just wanted to point out that in this plan, the house footprint has actually also been reduced, pretty significantly. So, the foundation footprint by my calculation on CAD, very quick and dirty, is about 500 square feet. So that's significantly less excavation. So it wasn't just the porch footprint, which Greg pointed out, is also also decreasing, but the foundation footprint is also decreasing. And if you were to pull up a previous plan, you could kind of see that fairly obviously, but we can certainly submit the actual numbers of that, but I just wanted to point out that I'm actually not even sure that there's even a net increase of impervious at this point. Greg, do you know?
Yes, there is. There's an increase of 218 square feet overall.
Okay,
So
and that's
would be
that includes the
mitigation.
house
Yes, it does.
footprint. Got it. Okay, cool. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that there will be significantly less excavation on the project than there was on the previous version, and that's all.
Thank you. I
Okay,
think, so I think if we could include a plant request for some sort of planting along, I mean, we could look at it in a few places. If they decided to cluster it in a corner, whatever, I think it should be a few hundred square feet. I think.
Yeah.
300 is a small area, and would be up for some sort of, whether it runs along a place or it's clustered in a corner or whatever. I think there should be some more. And we've also determined a brush line that I'm assuming from that is grass to that brush line. I'm assuming that's going to be maintained. That's what it shows on the plan.
Yeah, it calls it out as a brush line. That's essentially the top of the Rosa rugosa. So
Okay.
that's maintained, yes.
Okay. So, I mean, I wouldn't even mind seeing more Rosa rugosa to the south, whatever. Something as simple just to create a decent edge along the edge of that bank. Be good. All right. I'll take a motion.
And if you
Okay.
want to, you can close an issue.
Okay, I make a motion to close and issue 9 Collier.
That's from Penny. Do I have a second?
I second that, Brendan.
From Brendan. All in favor, Eric
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
81 Surfside. Need to open this one, right?
Yes.
On November 25th, 2024, 6 p.m., Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Mass General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the notice of intent application of Beach Boy Realty Trust for the construction of a deck on sonotubes located at 81 Surfside Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Information on how to access the virtual meetings available is posted on the website. Okay. I'm assuming this is Mr. Morse again.
Yes. Yep. Yep, for the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering.
Mm.
This was a notice of intent that was continued from your last meeting. The property is at 81 Surfside Road. There's an existing home at the property. The property is located in land subject to coastal storm flowage, designated as a VE zone at elevation 16. It's also a mapped barrier beach location. The proposal here is essentially a remodel of the existing home. We're not changing the footprint of it, but the property owner is doing, exterior and interior renovation of the home. The home itself is fully FEMA compliant. So again, we're not really touching the home itself. What puts us in front of you is the proposed deck. The proposed deck would be on the ocean side of the home. The deck would be supported by 4 wooden pilings, which would be driven, and then the deck would be constructed. The deck surface is at elevation 20, so it's 4 feet above the velocity zone, compliant with the 3-foot freeboard requirement. At the close of the last meeting, you had asked that we provide structural engineered plans for that deck. We've done that. We had structural engineer plans provided by Rivermore Engineering. And I'm going to turn it over to you for question or comment.
Jen?
Yes, I think they said at least 12 feet deep for the piles. We want to make sure they're far enough away from the seawall to not interfere with the seawall itself. The project is just the piles for the deck, so no housework if anything needs to happen with any of that support or any of the groundwork there. And normally your conditions are include not enclosing underneath. So if any other work on site is needed, they would need to file a new notice of intent.
Come back.
Okay. Penny?
Yeah, Greg, how far away from the seawall is this deck?
So the deck itself is elevated up in the air rather significantly. So it's 2 feet back from the seawall. The piles themselves are a little over 4 feet from the seawall.
Okay, my only concern is that if somebody needs to get in there to
Mhm.
work on the seawall, 2 feet ain't a lot of room. But see what everybody else says.
Okay. Eric?
How or what's the proposed method? And I'm sorry if this was already explained, but for getting those piles driven, with the house being there.
The sonotube something.
So
No, they're driven piles, Penny.
Oh, where did I find sonotubes?
Might have said that at one point in the
Okay,
language, but I think
Okay.
it's now driven piles, driven wood
thank
piles.
you. Yep,
the original application was sonotubes, but
okay,
so these are driven piles, so they would require an excavator on the site with a hammer to drive them into the ground. For reference, looking at the back of the seawall there, just for access purposes, the ground surface behind the seawall is at elevation 10, and this deck is the surface of it is at elevation 20. So there's almost 10 vertical feet of separation. Access behind this house is tight. It would have to be done typically with a smaller piece of equipment for any access. But an excavator with a hydraulic hammer is what would be used for driving these piles.
And that smaller piece of equipment will be able to get it to the depth required, as to not impact the footing of the seawall itself, right?
Yes.
we hope
Okay, thanks, Greg.
Brendan?
you're gonna be good.
I guess I really don't have any questions about this. I just I am concerned on how close these piles are going to be driven to the seawall. It looks like that there's not much on the other side of that seawall except sea. Um, so that's my only comment.
If,
Okay,
if I might add, the town, I think, is proposing a stone revetment project along portions of Surfside Road, including this property. It's not an upgrade of the seawall, but they are looking at, and I believe permitting, building new boulder revetment walls on the ocean side of the seawall in this case.
Yeah.
This would not impact that project.
all right. Do we have anybody in the audience?
No.
Um, I guess I'm with Penny and just concerned, Greg, about the distance to the seawall. I mean, if this I don't even know how complicated it is to get to that ownership and all that sort of thing. So your client doesn't, their property line is kind of in the seawall.
Correct.
A
It's
portion
in
of the
the seawall.
seawall is on their property, and then part of it's actually owned by another person. Is that right? Or is
There's a private resident on the ocean side of the wall.
Okay,
wow.
it's very confusing.
I guess that's at their peril. I don't know how that works, if they need to do that. Do we ever get anything from DPW, Jen, on what their preference was as a distance?
No, I didn't get a preference on the distance. They just were concerned with the other project that it was so close. Looking to see if I can open that. While I open that memo, is there any other way of constructing this deck without any piles? Is there any way to do anything off the house?
Can't leave it.
There really isn't. You have to have a structural support. Or, I mean, if this was a brand new house and you were starting from scratch with structural, it potentially could be cantilevered somewhat. But where this is an existing home that's already elevated on piles, it was not designed to accommodate a cantilevered deck. There was a deck in this location previously. I don't have the outline of that. It was removed some years ago.
By a storm or by the owners?
Yeah,
I don't know the
Right.
history of it.
Yes. Sorry,
It's
Greg.
obviously a home that, has been battered by storms in the past, no doubt about it.
Right.
But, 4 pilings is kind of the minimum number of pilings that you'd need to support a deck like this.
The
just
pilings
lost-
aren't an issue
They're
to me.
not
It's the
following
distance
you.
to the wall, and we were
Distance.
trying to have some consistency working with the DPW on some of these things and keeping it space. I know a lot of people have built right up to it. They're on top of it. There's patios that go to it. Those are all stuff that was done earlier.
Frank,
Yes, Penny.
yeah, I mentioned this, what you're saying right now to Jen earlier today. When you and I, maybe almost 10 years ago, there was a whole bunch of storms we had, and we had a real issue down Hummerock and along out to Lighthouse, with the decks being right attached at the seawall. And I know DPW had a preference of how many feet back, especially from town-owned seawalls, that you had to put new decks so they could get in there to work on them and stuff. But I can't remember what the footage was. But I mean, I just feel we're possibly due sometime to start having a bunch of awful winter storms like we did. So that's all.
Any luck, Jen?
Nope, all he mentions is with the previous set of plans for the other site, his calculations were that it was only leaving 6 inches to spare.
Oh,
And that was with it being 3 feet from the wall. So with 4 feet, it should be 1.5 feet if all of the assumed plans are correct.
I missed, I'm not following you. So,
Yeah, he didn't give a recommendation as to how far away it should be, either the deck or the footings.
okay, well, I know they had concern about the location of the footings and making sure that they didn't connect with the footings for the seawall. But, and I don't know if we even know that, do we, Greg, how big the footings are for this existing seawall?
I don't for the existing wall, no.
But so right now you're proposing to drive them about 4 feet back from the wall?
Yep, just over 4 feet back, 12 feet deep.
hope for the best, I guess.
Well, I would like to be, I hate to be all over the map on this distance, like, let's pick a
Yeah.
number that is consistent working with the.
I do have a hand raised if we want to hear
Sure.
from.
Yep.
All right, so Adam Brodsky, I'm unmuting you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Brodsky. I'm a local land use and environmental lawyer, and I'm working with the applicant on this project. I would just like to, if I could, refocus the commission, because unless I'm mistaken, this project complies with the performance standards for work within lands subject to coastal storm flowage and on dune. And speculation regarding some future improvements of a seawall, which may be owned by the private property owners and not the town. I don't think is heading in the right direction here. I think Chair Snow said it best. I mean, to some extent, the applicant is assuming the risk here. But try and evaluate the project based upon some future activity which may or may not occur, perhaps is not the best use of the commission's time. So I just wanted to weigh in on that.
I appreciate that, Adam, and we've been talking before with the town building department, whatnot, as to the best way to have some consistency here, and also hopefully not. I mean, we've seen these things over top at the waves hitting the deck, and then they're just headed right for the house. I know people have come up with all kinds of contraptions for their deck. And I guess some of that will land on the building department.
Chair Snow, unless I'm mistaken, I believe Greg said that this deck is going to be 10 vertical feet above the seawall. So whatever waves are going to overtop the seawall are going to go beneath the deck as designed, but I'll stand corrected. And again, I can understand if this was a town beach and clearly a town seawall. It looks like if the town secures permission to do this project, and I don't want to discourage the town from doing anything to protect private property, that it would be a revetment project in front of the seawall rather than repairs to the seawall.
Well, I mean, Greg can tell us what that figure is, but I'm looking at top of wall at 18, and I'm looking at the top of the piles for the house at 18.7. So even if there's a couple of feet at the top of that house, the first floor elevation of that house is not more than 21 or.
If I may, this is Greg.
Yeah.
The first floor elevation of that house is 20.7.
Okay.
The proposed deck would be at elevation 20. So it's basically one step from the first floor onto the back deck. Yeah, the seawall, you're correct, Mr. Snow, is at 18.2, but it's the land behind the seawall, what I was referring to, is at elevation 10. So that
Gotcha.
seawall is essentially a freestanding structure. It's not filled up to the top of it.
Right. But water coming over the top of the seawall is coming over at about the same elevation as the deck.
Slightly below it, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think to Mr. Brodsky's, Attorney Brodsky's point, the piles are consistent with what's allowed in that location. And I just let the homeowner be mindful of what they're going to be looking at. Maybe the building department has some other thoughts. Okay. I don't have anything. Make a motion.
If you want to close an issue and then with the condition of it, no lattice underneath, no enclosure underneath of it.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Anything else, Jen?
That this is only for the deck. So if anything needs to be done in the ground, underneath the house, around the house, that's a different filing.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to close, Frank,
Sure.
with Jen's stipulations.
Close an issue.
Close an issue.
Okay. Go ahead, Penny.
I made a motion to close an issue.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
That's from Eric. All in favor, Brendan
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Happy
night.
Thanksgiving.
Same to you. 85 Surfside.
I think this one's already open. We have Darren Grady on the call to present.
Yep, I'm here.
I think there's a couple changes from the last time.
Yeah, they were in.
Okay. You bring up the plan, Jen? There we go. So there was a couple comments during the last meeting, one of them being that the pile depth for the helical piles need to be 15 feet. That's been addressed. We met with Jen last week on Thursday out at the site with the owner, and I know I'm showing 3 feet from the wall to the piles line. That can be moved to 4 feet. If the commission's okay with that, I would revise the plan and submit that as a condition of approval if they choose to approve this. My client has asked that the deck be extended towards the wall a little bit by cantilever. He would like it to be like 1 foot, but I think he accept the 2 feet that was just given for 81. One of the things omitted in our previous presentation is that this deck is being constructed with what they call pivot boards. The pivot boards will allow water to flow that come on top of the deck to flow through these openings in the deck. So it would make it get to the ground a lot sooner, since this is elevated above ground from elevation 17.8, where it's right up against this seawall, to about 13 or 14 with the ground surfaces there. As far as changes in this, the previous plan did not show the steps and deck on the south side of the site, or the bottom of the page. The steps going out to is a corner deck there with an elevation of 15.8, and more steps going down to 13.8. Then it comes down to an existing bluestone patio at elevation 12. Other portions of the proposed improvements are, there's some bluestone patio blocks that are 18 inches wide, 3 feet long, that were added to the plan up in the northern portion near where the proposed addition is and the proposed open deck. and there's a removal of 51 square feet of of a pervious paver walkway. My client would like to still build that pervious paver driveway. As far as an expansion of the driveway, he needs an extra space, parking space over there. And I hope that addresses all of your comments.
Okay. Jen?
I think he said this about they are removing the part of the walkway next to where they're proposing more driveway, and they're removing those steps to the deck that are by that walkway. So they would, anyways, just talking about things that are coming out. And the addition that's on the street side of the house, it's open underneath of that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So otherwise, I think it's the same concerns we've had before. And I do think it would be better to have the piles 4 feet from the wall for the deck.
Right. Brendan?
Sorry. Yeah, I agree. Having the piles 4 feet from the wall would be great. Better. I still don't, I guess still not a fan of the expansion on the driveway. But that's all I have.
Okay. Eric?
I don't oppose the applicant's desire to have an additional parking space. I do oppose the proposed pervious pavers, as I stated in the last meeting on this matter. The arguments presented at the last meeting were addressed. I do not believe that additional hard surfaces are conducive to the site, and I think that a more appropriate surface should be used for that additional parking space, whether that's the crushed seashells or something else that's more mobile. I understand that adds more of a maintenance component for the applicant, but given the situation, they do have an existing pervious paver driveway on both sides of the house. And if this is an auxiliary driveway, I highly I strongly believe that additional pervious pavers on here would be inappropriate.
Okay. Penny?
Yep, I feel the same as Brendan and Eric, and about the deck away from the seawall, and don't think we need any more pervious pavers out front. Go with seashells or something. No more hard surfaces. Thank you.
Do we have anybody in the audience for this one?
I do not see any hand. Oh, no, I do have a hands raised. Where's Chris? All right. Chris, I'm unmuting you. If you can please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Chris. I'm the owner of the property. I just wanted to speak about the pervious pavers that we are proposing on the street side. We have done, we bought the property in 2022. We have done seashells there, and the first top over, the entire seashells went into the middle of the road as well as across the street into the catch basin, clogging it. So DPW came and plowed that out. We then went to crushed stone. The exact same thing happened. We lost our entire driveway. Not one stone was left. And it was in the middle of the street and the catch basin. So this is to prevent the road from becoming impassable or the storm drain from being clogged. It has nothing really to do with maintenance on our side. It's just to keep a level space for parking for us and the accessory dwelling that will be in the ground level, which by Scituate code, we have to have 3 parking spaces in order to get that, and we only have 2 on that driveway. So we need to have something that's level, that's safe, that somebody can get out of their vehicle without being on, cobble or rocky sand, so that it's safe for someone to get in and out. So that's the reason we're doing the pervious pavers as opposed to what we've tried in the past.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I would just comment on that, saying that the increased hard surface there will just further increase sand and other cobble migration from the seaward side of that paved space. All of that material will wash onto not only the proposed new pervious paver driveway, but also into the road, causing a similar situation as you experienced before. So that's just my comment on that.
With regards to the deck, we just conditioned another project that we allowed them to put the deck 2 feet from the seawall. But we looked for the piles to be 4 feet from the seawall. So I'm assuming that they could do the same thing in that location. Right now they have the piles right along the edge of the deck, but in fact they can frame that with a beam and cantilever it. So is that
That's what we're proposing.
okay? So that can just be in the orders that the piles will be 4 feet from the wall and the edge of the deck is 2 feet. It's a little different than we can get a revised plan. The other additions and things I think are good. When the existing walkway and stairs get removed, what's going to happen at that location?
So those bluestone pavers will allow access there. They're 18 inches by 3 feet, like I said, and there's 6 inches between them to allow it to be more pervious, but it'll allow access from the driveway down to, and they'll access through like the basement or the first floor.
Okay,
There.
so the black squares are going to be the bluestone, and you're going to eliminate that little L-shaped walk. Is that
That's
right?
correct.
Okay, and so what happens to that area when you remove the pavers or whatever that is? Does that just go to gravel or grass, or what is the surface there?
That'll go to gravel. That's what's all around it. The only grass that's on here is in the front center where the landscape timbers are shown.
Yep. So everything else on this site is basically gravel?
Yeah, gravel, the pavers, pervious pavers, and then there's that lawn area in the middle, front and center.
Okay. And I mean, I think we heard from the owner a little bit. So basically, when this washes over, water runs along that gravel. I'm assuming it probably erodes some of it. Maybe a lot of it's just hardened by now, that it doesn't get stripped away. Is that reasonable comment? I don't know. What keeps that intact? Now, there's no vegetation, no plantings, nothing.
Yeah.
Yes, there is.
Other than in the area where the septic is, right? Or
Right.
it used to be.
I think, Chris, did you try planting something over in those other areas and it just didn't last? It got washed away.
If you can unmute
Yes.
the owner, that'd be great.
Yeah, so basically what happens is that water comes over. There's no cobble or things that wash into the street other than what we put at the end of that driveway because it's pretty much set and stuck from the seawall to sort of the end. But as the seashells and the crushed stone that we had, that was just basically there, so it just took that out. And anything that we plant along that way with the water coming, it instantly kills it. We can't get anything to grow there or put anything on that side. So that we've kept the plantings in the landscape timber area, and then also on the side between the pervious paver where it says landscape timber retaining wall, we planted several juniper and seagrasses there as well. Sort of because the house protects those from being killed by the saltwater flooding.
Sure. Okay. Um, well, I'll take a motion from somebody. Um,
Well, what's the motion gonna be? I mean, none of us are happy with more pavers for another driveway.
well, then you can put that in the orders.
Okay,
If you want to make a motion to close, the discussion's been made about the pavers.
yeah,
If
okay.
it's a consensus of the commission that they don't want the pavers there, they can put that in the orders.
Okay,
Are
thank
you
you. I
okay,
make a
Jen? Are you,
motion.
Jen?
I'm okay with that. You're okay with the parking area and putting some sort of surface there.
Well,
Yeah,
let's be, it's,
Shells.
I think the commission is, it's gravel or crushed stone or shells
Or
or
something,
something.
something
not-
more natural.
Right. The pervious pavers just it speeds up the water, it causes other scouring, and eventually they get pulled up.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so
Um,
I make a motion.
And
to
so
close.
just so I'm
Yep.
clear, in the area that where the walkway that's getting removed, you're just gonna put gravel, compacted gravel in that location and leave it gravel. So,
Correct.
okay,
I make a motion to close.
it was motion by Penny. Do we have a second
I second that.
from Brendan?
Brendan.
All in favor? Eric?
Yes.
Frank, yes. Do we have Jen on yet?
No.
I don't see her. I mean, if you want to close an issue, you can.
Okay. We gotta read,
Okay.
Penny, make a
I'll
motion.
redo the motion to close an issue on 85 Surfside.
I will
Okay.
second again.
From Brendan, all in favor? Eric
Yes.
and Frank, yes.
Okay. No, I don't see Jen yet.
Okay. 196 Edward Foster Road.
We did open this one, and Darren, are you presenting this? Hold on, let me unmute him.
I think my brother Rick is on this
Okay.
meeting for this project.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I see it. All right, I'm unmuting Rick.
Thank you. I believe Matt Mitchell and perhaps Joe Harold and maybe Mike Picard.
Okay.
We're just looking at the boardwalk tonight, Jen.
No, this is the whole
No,
project.
this is a raise rebuild. They are elevating the home so the foundation's out of the ground on open
Yeah.
piles. And yes, there's plantings, removing a wall
Okay,
and
okay.
a boardwalk, but
Sorry.
I
all
can
right,
go
so
with-
anybody who needs to be unmuted,
Mike.
it'd be great if you you would just raise your hand. All right, I see Mike.
And you see Matt there too?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay.
I'll kick things off. I don't hear Matt jumping in here, so Rick.
Well,
There's Matt.
I will, Rick. I didn't know if the commission wanted to go directly to you. It's Matt Mitchell from Ornberger, DeLisi and Harris on behalf of the applicant 196 Edward Foster LLC. Mr. Joe Harold is here, as is Rick, as you know, and Michael Kutu is of Sudbury Design, the landscape architect, is also present if the commission would like to hear from him. My understanding is since the last meeting of November 4th, Rick provided some additional information to the commission for its consideration, which Rick will obviously be able to go through. And it's our hope at this point that the commission has all the information that it needs and will be able to close an issue tonight. And with that, I'll hand it over to Rick.
Thank you, Rick Grady from Grady Consulting. We met with the commission on November 4th. At that time, we discussed a boardwalk that the landscape architects had on their plan, which we did not have on our site plan at the time. We've since added that boardwalk to our site plan. We also added the proposed ramp to the new dock, which was permitted under a separate notice of intent, along with references to the DEP file number for that ramp approaching the dock. We also showed a granite terrace or some notes on the granite terrace on 184 Edward Foster Road, along with the notation that that had been approved by a minor modification on a different file number for 184 Edward Foster. We had some discussion on the previously proposed ground level enclosure, and we've removed any references to that ground level enclosure from the plans as requested. We've added the pile locations that were provided by the structural engineer to our site plan. The landscape architects revised their plan to include the wood guardrail, or what we believe to be previous drift fences, to their plan as well as our plan. We've also added proposed contours to the dune enhancement that the landscape architects are providing. On their plan, they provided some very good images of what they're proposing for plantings: American beach grass, CP, seaside sandwort, and also northern bayberry. The contours that we've shown are really depicting what they would like to do to make it look like a more naturalized dune enhancement. Basically, the ground will be brought up with sand compatible with the existing environment. Planted, and then it'll have kind of a hummocky natural flow to the finished grade around the proposed house. So with that, we'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Jen?
Yes, so there's no DEP comments. We agree with the resource area that they're working in dune. It's good that they're elevating on piles. The driveway should remain a surface of, what they're proposing, so something along those lines going forward. I'd suggest for the boardwalk area to have orders that match other orders they have on site as far as the width is concerned and the material used. They are removing a wall, but no new walls should be constructed. And great that they are adding material, adding appropriate plants. So I think it's good.
Okay. Penny, you want to go on this one?
I like everything they've done. I don't have any issues, Frank. I'm sorry.
All right. Brendan?
I'm just curious, how much sand are you bringing in?
We don't have a calculated quantity. However, basically, if we look at the existing contours and the proposed contours, we're coming up 12 to 18 inches in a few isolated areas. So if I had to put an estimate on the volume of that, I'd say 40 to 50 cubic yards of sand.
Okay, and that's going to be compatible with what's already there?
Yes, yeah, we would not be opposed to a condition to that effect either.
Okay. I don't think I have any other questions.
Okay. Thank you. Eric?
I think that the project overall looks good, both from the structure side of things, and from what has been described on the landscape side as well. While I don't have a planting plan or a plant schedule in front of me, the proposed plants that were presented just moments ago sound great. My question is more on the planting plan side of things. The beach grass and pea and bayberry, is that going to be planted in a way that is going to help reduce the migration of that sand up until establishment, because sand moves? So just question on that and how that's going to be achieved, just to minimize the amount of migration of that newly introduced sand material for that dune replication.
Yeah, I'd suggest that we keep the erosion control in place, monitored and repaired when necessary for probably a full growing season. It should remain in place until request for a certificate of compliance.
And what's the size of the herbaceous material? Actually, what are the proposed sizes for, I guess, all the material? Because that will also help indicate at least, for the proposed work, rate of establishment, plugs versus gallon or 3 gallon or 5 gallon or whatever it happens to be.
Mr. Chairman,
Rick,
I could answer that if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yes, Mike Kutu, Sudbury Design Group. Excuse me, the intent here is really to create a natural dune. We're planning on covering approximately 12,000 square feet of area. The planting, and the reason it's very hard to put a specific number on it, is seasonally these plants, the availability of these plants can change. So one year you might only be able to find beach grass in a 4-inch pot. Another year you might be able to find just plugs. Another year it might be quartz. Same with all of these, basically. Our intent is really to create a pretty solid palette down there that will stabilize this area and provide a rather lush dunescape. That's really the intent. We're not going to be putting things in, 2¼ inch peat pots, 18 inches apart. It's going to be a little more robust than that, if that helps answer your question.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I appreciate the clarification on that, just because this is
it's just very difficult to spec the exact sizes because you never know the availability.
Of course. It's just the sifting sands nature of these things, of course.
Sure.
Just was curious on what your approach was going to be. So thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have anybody in the audience on this one?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. I think the only thing was brought to my attention was this boardwalk. We had talked before about it sort of being a floating thing, but I'm noticing that this is going to actually be secured with helical piles, some fashion. Is a way to try to keep that in place.
Yes, that's what we're calling for, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I mean, I think you see that this building's actually pulled back from the harbor a little bit from the existing, both from the street and from the harbor, maybe a little closer, a part of it closer to the seawall. But that distance is what is that distance from the structure to the, I don't know, is it the top of a coastal bank or?
It's a stone revetment there. The distance there is approximately 55 feet or so.
56 feet.
Yep.
So this is a little closer to the revetment than the existing home.
Correct, approximately 15 feet closer.
But it's elevated.
That's right.
I don't really think I have. I mean, it's pretty substantial planting, more than we've seen with many projects, that's for sure.
It's lovely.
And we're elevating an existing structure. Just getting a little further from the road. Guess the only negative I would guess is moving a little bit closer to the seawall, but where it's elevated, I'm not sure that's really a big deal.
The closest point on the existing structure is actually only a few feet further. We're only a few feet further than the closest point of the existing structure, which is on the northern end.
All right, it's that small deck that's
Correct.
on the
Yeah,
north.
we essentially tried to site the building, pretty much within that same guideline.
Yeah. I don't have any more. If we don't have any other anybody have any other questions or comments?
Did a good job.
Okay, I'll take a motion.
Can we close an issue, Jen?
Yes, close an issue, similar conditions to other Elevate homes about,
Right.
no, enclosure and driveway material.
What is the driveway material there? Is it crushed stone, I think?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I make a motion to close an issue.
I have a second
I'll second that.
from Brendan. All in favor, Eric
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you. Good evening.
Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you, ladies and
Happy
gentlemen.
Thanksgiving.
Much appreciated.
Holidays, holidays.
Okay. Um. 279, 281 Old Oaken Bucket Road, the cottages.
Oh, cottages.
Yes, and we have opened this one. Whoever wants to present it, if they could please raise their hand and I will unmute them.
Jeff, Jen, can we take just a 2-minute break? I'll be right.
Sure. Yep.
Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. Jen, do you want to, we have, I think it was Attorney DeLisi ready to,
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm here.
go ahead, Jen.
All set. Okay, so Jen, just if you could please promote, if you have not already, Mark Casey, Tony Esposito, and Brad Holmes, and are all part of the developer team.
Yes. They're all unmuted.
Fantastic. So for the record, Jeff DeLisi, Orenberger DeLisi Harris, we represent the property owner who last year obtained a permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals for 24 units to be on this property. The permit was a comprehensive permit pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, low and moderate income housing. I'm gonna just kind of briefly do a quick rundown summary of what this is, what we, from a legal perspective, what permits we've obtained. And then I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Tony from South Shore Engineering to kind of review the plan.
Will this take a long time, Jeff?
No, I don't think so.
Good.
I'm trying to be brief, be honest.
Great. Thank you.
No worries. So just for the purposes of the board and members of the public who are unfamiliar with Chapter 40B, this project was already reviewed on behalf of the town by Merrill Engineering in connection with our zoning permit. The zoning permit, because it's a 40B, acts and approves the project as if it is enforcing the Scituate wetland regulations. So the purpose of tonight's hearing is limited to the commission's review and the enforcement of the state regulations, not the town's regulations. Sites a little more than 11 acres, about 2.5 of that is wet, the remainder is upland. We have a wetland delineation, which is currently effective from the year 2019. Around that time, we have an order of conditions that allowed a wetland crossing to access area, which Mark is going to review, that would allow for a reserve septic field. The primary common area where the soil absorption system, which is currently being proposed, is outside of the jurisdiction of the commission. So I'll let Mark and Tony go over the plan. Brad is here. I think you're gonna want Lucas Environmental to review its peer review letter, and Brad is likely to respond to much of that. So, Mark?
Thanks, Jeff. Mark Casey from South Shore Survey Consultants. As Jeff had alluded to, it was actually in 12/16/2020 or thereabouts, we filed a notice of intent to do a short wetlands crossing to get a machine into the upland area to do perk tests. And that for a rubber tire backhoe, that width of that crossing was 15 feet. So kind of a overview of this project. This project started out actually as 16 duplex units. So a total of actually 32 units. We went back to the drawing board after meeting with the ZBA and thought that the approach should be single family homes. So currently we have 24 single family homes. Jeff also mentioned Deb Keller at Merrill Engineers was the review engineer for this project. We meet all the DEP stormwater regulations. It's been thoroughly reviewed. from that aspect. So each individual house will have its own septic tank, which will go gravity to a sewer main, which will go to a pump station, which will pump effluent up to the soil absorption system. All the drainage is predominantly subsurface, and again, we have no issues with the comparison between pre and post development drainage analysis. We don't increase any peak flow drainage runoff, and again, we comply with all DEP stormwater regulations. The project itself, there are some comments from your peer review engineer that we've gone through and are certainly prepared to respond tonight if you would like us to. There isn't anything, I don't think we have any major issues at this point. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, just briefly, the project was created so as to respect a 25-foot no disturbance buffer from any resource area. And Mark was able to achieve that. I just wanted to mention that as well.
Okay. Jen, you've had I guess, a chance to go through some of this. Do you want to make some comments first?
Well, Devin from Lucas Environmental is on the call if we want to hear from her. And there are a couple different pages of plans we might want to look at that, you know, when we get there, and have other questions that I think might make it easier to see where there's walls proposed, where the limit of work is, you know, just to kind of see the project. But I'll let Devin give her comments and then, you know, talk from there.
Sounds good.
And I guess I should unmute her. Sorry. Okay.
Good evening, commission members. Can you hear me okay?
We get you.
Great. So I'm Devin Tabor with Lucas Environmental. As Jen said, we've gone through the application, the plans, and all of the associated documents for the notice of intent filing. We've issued 2 review letters, and in order to kind of keep things short and sweet here and keeping things moving forward, we issued our most recent review letter on November 15th. And I can just go through the 10 different points that we're still waiting to kind of, you know, see how the applicant and its project team would like to address those. And then Jen can add in anything else that she wants. And more or less, it's going to be turned over to you guys to kind of deliberate. So we went through, again, a series of comments. It looks like the applicant's team addressed a majority of those comments. There are some things that we just want clarification on in more detail. And then we also just have some recommendations for the commission to consider if an order of conditions is issued. So we appreciate the applicant's team, specifically ECR, answering a lot of our questions, running through the performance standards for bordering vegetated wetland impacts. And then, so right now, kind of shooting through the letter on a review letter to E. So we kind of asked the applicant to run through the impacts within the buffer zone. And while we understand that the project isn't subject to the bylaw, as Attorney DeLisi had previously mentioned, because this is, you know, the zoning board has implemented their regulation and any associated waivers, you know, we just want the commission to understand that, you know, the project is proposing work in over 50% of the existing buffer zone. Based on based on this, we just want you to consider that the applicant has proven that the project will not cause any adverse impacts to the adjacent resource areas. While a portion of the project has already been developed, specifically at, I believe it's 279 Old Oak and Bucket, and then a large majority of the proposed project is at 281, consisting of undeveloped area, woodlands, wetlands, etc. It was mentioned by other boards that the applicant could consider a dense landscape buffer. Now, while the applicant has provided a landscape plan, we just want to emphasize that the commission could consider restoration of natural vegetation adjacent to these jurisdictional resource areas, specifically in areas between the proposed wall and the limits of the wetland lines that were delineated out there. So that was one of the ticket items. Another item would be, you may want to consider an invasive species plan. I know that's not, we acknowledge that the wetland replication narrative addresses monitoring of invasive species in the replication area. However, it could be something that, might be favorable to provide. Our team maintains the request for further details regarding the construction technique for the proposed access roadway. We are still very much unclear whether the confirmed construction strategy could have unintended consequences on the hydrology of the existing wetlands, potentially affecting the wetland more than originally calculated. It's just not clear. We also asked if the applicant and their team could consider the utilization of swamp mats, which is a very standard practice when working through wetlands. Utility projects use swamp mats, timber mats all the time, which are temporary impacts, to the area for construction related purposes. And then, we did ask a few outstanding questions, such as does the applicant plan to install drainage structures? Just more detail there. So to move down the line, we did ask if the applicant has considered combining that pretty robust erosion and sedimentation control plan, which includes structural erosion control barriers with a native seed mix. Obviously we're looking at this project and it's a pretty large project. Generally manicured lawn, fescue or mulch is not considered to have any valuable benefits for wildlife. We also asked the applicant to consider biodegradable netting or matting, to aid in seed germination and conserve moisture in areas which will experience high water flows, etc. And then a few other outstanding items are just, the proposed access way is 18 feet. It's a pretty wide access driveway. We asked the applicant, to kind of detail, provide more detail on this. And while we understand that Title V requires the reserve area, it's got to be on the plan, that's fine. Title that you can actually access, great. We just want to make sure that the commission understands and has a sufficient evaluation of the design and the proposed width of the roadway, and then proper maintenance for that gravel access roadway, because we don't want gravel traveling down into an area of existing wetland and constructed wetland. We are asking again, just, whether or not the impacts to the buffer zone have been minimized. As part of the wetlands protection regulations, it's the applicant's responsibility to design a project to avoid, minimize, and negate any impacts to resource areas. So we just, we want to discuss that. Specifically, within, they're proposing work within feet of the A series wetland, specifically at wetland flag A12 through A17. near the B series wetland at wetland flag B141, wetland flag B1-1, and so forth. So the commission may want to discuss this extent of the impacts to the buffer zone during this public hearing process and further. And then we also just wanted the commission to possibly consider an appropriate irrigation schedule prior to the commencement of any construction, which could be included as a special condition in the order if approved. I do want to note that the applicant, stated that they weren't familiar with laboratory testing for soil, laboratory testing soil for organic content. I just want to note that laboratory testing for organic matter is a customary and common practice in this industry. And it would be in the commission's benefit to make this a standard request for any sort of replication projects that would require soil amendments. It's an inexpensive test. It's $30. You can send it to laboratories such as UMass and provided by other laboratories as well. And it will help achieve the success of the replication areas. Because if you don't have high soil organic content, the replication area is not going to survive. So lastly, just to end things off, and then I'll give it over to Jen, is on the original and the revised plans before you, not these plans that are up now, but the actual site plans, there is a proposed chain link fence. I don't know what the discussion is on that, or if that, was discussed during the ZBA as required or necessary just for safety purposes. But, the commission may want to consider a more wildlife friendly barrier, such as a post rail fence or metal fencing with pale design to allow animals to kind of pass through the buffer zone while still providing that security that the property might need. So I think that's it from me. That's kind of outstanding. So I just wanted to go through that.
That's good. Thank you. Do you want to respond to some of that?
Yeah.
Applicant?
Yeah, I think it's thank you so much, Devin. I think I'm gonna ask Brad to jump on. I think Brad would be the more appropriate individual to speak to just about every one of these issues, and we probably could eliminate quite a few of them actually. So Brad?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, members of the commission. Brad Holmes from ECR. To respond to Devin's points, I tried to jot them down, so I'll go through them quickly. As far as adding to a landscape plan with a more vegetation between the retaining wall and the wetland line, that's something that we were discussing, and we would be amenable to that. We could certainly use a native seed mix in certain areas where there wouldn't be a need for lawn or landscape. So that's something that we'd be certainly agreeable to. Regarding an invasive species management plan, we do have that included in the wetland replication design. The rest of the site where it's going to be developed is going to be maintained. So that's going to be lawn and landscape. So that wouldn't necessarily need an overall plan because it would be maintained by a management crew. But the areas that would be left wooded between the limit of work and the wetland, that could be something that we could look into. Right now, there isn't a dominance of invasive species in the buffer that's there, such as Japanese knotweed or Phragmites or something like that we'd be concerned of. So I don't expect there to be a dominance or an intrusion significantly in invasives within those areas, but that could be something that we could look at. Regarding swamp mats are a great utility to use when you're working in the wetland as a temporary use and then working your way back out. For this project, where we're going to be creating the gravel roadway through the wetland to get to the reserve area, they'll be removing the organics and then filling it with a gravel road substrate. We could certainly include swamp mats if needed, but because it's not a temporary project, it may be something that may not be required. The contractor could certainly have them on hand if he felt it's necessary. The note about the erosion control plan with native seed mix, that again, I mentioned that would be something that we could include into the design, not a problem. Irrigation schedule, certainly we can certainly include an irrigation schedule on the wetland replication design. If it's planted in the early spring or planted in late fall, the only times of irrigation would be needed during the summer droughts if we do experience that. And obviously the property owners are looking to maintain this replication area because we're going to be reporting back to the commission for at least 2 years. So that would be something that we would irrigate, but we can certainly provide a schedule to the commission. Regarding lab testing on the replication soil replacement, it's not something that we're opposed to. It's something that we've done with a compost and a loam mix. What I asked for is that if the commission would like to have testing, what are the parameters that you're looking for? We don't have any guidance, just test it and what are the results? What's the desired effect that we would be looking towards that? And then a chain link fence, we could certainly possibly revise that. I'll leave that up to the design engineers, but it could certainly be something where you could have at least 8 inches of clearance between the bottom of the fence and the ground so that small critters could go through. There are a few other items there, but I think that kind of hits the majority of them, and I'll bring it back to my team. They can fill in anything I missed.
Mark, do you have any comments?
I just wanted to comment on the width of the gravel way going down to the reserve area. Again, just to get a rubber tire backhoe through that area required a 15-foot wide access. And the reserve area, although it's not going to be constructed and used hopefully for many, many, many years, realistically, it'll be a tracked machine that will have to go down through there. And 12 feet or 15 feet is not adequate. It really needs to be 18-foot wide. I think I would also point out that the area that we're disturbing, and Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, is slightly under 1,500 square feet, and the replication area is significantly larger than the disturbed area.
Yes, you're correct, Mark. If this was a project where we were pushing 5,000 square feet, then we would look to reduce so that we could be under the 5,000 square feet. This is at 1,500 square feet. It's a fairly small area.
Okay. Any other?
Devin has her hand up to respond.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Just to note, Brad, that sounds good on most of those. My recommendation for the organic content for the laboratory testing would be, we usually aim for 18 to 20% on that. So it could be something that can be included in the condition if you needed some sort of range on that, Jen.
Okay.
Where do we go from here? Jen, do you want to add anything?
Well, I think maybe we can bring up the site plan. I'm just thinking page 1. And I mean, I'm not sure how familiar people are with it, but hopefully if you have it open on your own screen or have a copy, but the top of the top of the plan, I don't even know what direction we're facing, but there's a wall and there's a chain link fence. And then on the right side where they're going kind of near the wetland, all of the structures are 25 feet away. The limit of work gets closer though. So those are the areas where we would want to have any additional erosion control proposed, and kind of going all the way down and around, maybe not necessarily having lawn there, these areas behind the wall that's proposed. I'm not sure if everybody knows where these walls are.
Just to add to that, if you look kind of in the top right corner, there's a line that's kind of in the middle of a lot of the green noted areas, and the line is brown, or at least it looks brown to me.
Yeah.
That line is I think that's the erosion limit right there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
And
that's what I read also.
yeah, and you could follow that silt barrier all the way down and around, if anybody cares to do that. But that's that's where you're putting your erosion controls.
And you're clearing to the erosion control.
Mark, I don't know that. Mark?
We are, hold on for one moment. I can look at this on my PDF that I've got. So there will be right up to the erosion control is only going to be cleared as necessary. Where we're very, very close to the erosion control barrier with like unit 18, obviously we'll be clearing the area right up to the barrier. In other areas, we will not have to go all the way to the barrier.
So I think the goal is to try to respect 25 feet from any resource area to the best we possibly can. So you can see that the barrier is closer to the wetland than 25 feet in just about every instance. But that's that portion between the 25 feet and the barrier is intended. It's an area that is to be cleared as necessary, but not necessarily. We're not going to be clearing to the barrier.
Okay, so some of the things that were mentioned that are maybe worth talking about are wanting to see areas that can be restored more naturally rather than being lawn. Additional erosion measures where you are getting close to the wetland line or think that you need it, and possibly conservation markers if you would want those as well. And details about the fence, if we making sure there's some space underneath it. And then the wetland crossing itself is probably something that needs to be discussed as to, is this something done now? Is this something done when it's needed? I'm curious what people's thoughts are on that.
If may I speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah. The idea here is to construct the 18-foot wide gravel access way and the pipe, okay, that will go underneath it, okay. And again, it won't be used for God knows how many years, but it can't be illusory. Title V, demands that this soil absorption system in the reserve area is real and not just something on paper that can't be used. In regard to the fence, okay, we spoke about this earlier amongst ourselves, and we really don't have any problem going to a split rail fence. Right, it's a non-issue as far as we're concerned. we were also asked about doing some more planting between the retaining wall and the actual wetlands line. And we are happy to do that as well. Brad can prepare a separate plan sheet for that. We'll show you what we propose to plant, the amount, the spacing, etc. That's all I wanted to get in.
Thank you. Okay, we could be at this for a bit. We want to jump into some members' questions. I'll take Penny.
Yeah, oh, okay. You just mentioned, I think, Mark, you just mentioned fence chain, to do a post and reel. That's instead of the chain link.
Yes, exactly.
Could you please tell me where exactly are you planning on the chain link? I mean, I'm having a hard time with this plan that's up right now. Is it
Okay.
all the way around the property you're
No,
fencing?
no. If you look at if you look at the row of houses labeled 12, 13, 14, 15, 16,
Okay, yeah,
17,
yeah,
and then you look at the property line, okay, that
right,
separates our site from the abutter, where
right.
the intermittent stream is.
Uh-huh,
Along that property line, if you, I know it's hard because it's not blown up real large for
yeah,
you to see,
I can't
but
see.
you can see the detail for the fence right along the property line.
Okay, I see it now.
And right by the tip, just southerly, the westerly of the tip of the north arrow, you can see the note that says proposed chain link fence and a leader going down to the chain link fence symbol. So that's
Okay.
where we would be talking about a post and rail fence as opposed to chain link.
Much nicer, much nicer.
And
Okay.
that also
Mark,
provides for any wildlife to get through that easily.
Yeah, and not get hurt.
Yes.
I have another question here. Oh, okay, on the, if we move the plan up, I'd like to go to the other side of the plan. The houses, keep going. All right, the houses, I'm gonna say it's west, maybe. When you're driving in, it would be your houses on your right, okay? I don't see any trees in the back. I see trees out front. Is there a reason you can't do some plantings behind those houses? I don't know what number they are. You have this.
I think it's units 1 through 3, Mark.
Okay, and
I'm talking after the access, okay? Going into the development.
yes. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so okay, I'm just now looking at the, we could, there is pretty minimal planting called for the approved landscape plan. That's something that as we're preparing a plan to show additional plantings between the retaining wall and the actual wetlands themselves, we can include this area with some additional plantings. I don't think that's a big issue.
Okay, because we have to remember that this is a densely wooded area right now, and it's gonna be clear cut. So, I would love to see as much vegetation put back in. On the access road, you say that you have to put it in now. We don't have a option to do it later. Is that what I just heard you say a few minutes ago?
Well, it makes sense to put it in now. Okay. If let's say for some reason 30 years from now or 40 years from now, there was a catastrophic failure of the primary soil absorption system. Okay. That means the reserve has to be constructed fairly quickly. Okay. This access drive should be in place for that to happen. And for that to happen, they will have to come back in front of the commission that's sitting at that time, because even though we're not going into the over the 50-foot buffer, we are part of the reserve areas in the 50 to 100-foot buffer, which is permitted by Title V and the Wetlands Protection Act. It just doesn't make sense from an engineering and construction standpoint not to do the access way now.
Okay, and I have one more question. The road into the houses, that's gonna be paved
Yes.
from the
Yes.
street. And how wide is that road gonna be?
I believe that is 20 feet with a 1-foot Cape Cod berm on either side.
And then Mark, in the approximate areas of units, 10 through 13, it's going to be a little less wide, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
So those are the units kind of on
yeah,
the left.
those are the applicant. One of the applicants was a career firefighter and that with the fire chief for the town of Scituate. And I believe, and Tony, jump in here if I'm wrong, but I believe the portion of the road is almost like a common driveway really for 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 in that area. I think that is 18 feet, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I'm good for now, Frank. I'll think of something else.
Okay. Eric?
Let's see. So given the highly, detailed plan here, I appreciate all the information. I also want to recognize that this development is, this proposed development is a lot for this space, especially as it pertains to the adjacent resource area. I understand the situation that we are not looking at town bylaws. With that being said, I appreciate the proposal for the dense landscape buffer. I do have concern for how, the resource area is going to be protected. There are certain areas here that I think the silt sock goes pretty close to some of the wetland areas, which means the limit of work is going to be pretty close, specifically behind, I think it's unit 24, 23, and 22, just because of the nature of the wall as it relates to that silt sock there. We're pretty close. I don't know what the footings or the base of that wall is going to require for excavation, but that is a concern of mine. Just to protect that resource area that's adjacent to. We're right up to the line of the 25-foot buffer with that wall along that stretch. So that is a particular concern. But like I said, I do appreciate the consideration of having a natural vegetated buffer around the entire site to help mitigate some of these potential concerns, but I'd like to hear more on that. Second, I do also appreciate the native seed mix being proposed rather than some of the turf grass in especially some of the more sensitive areas to provide more ecologic value. I am curious though, as it pertains to the crossing. Mark, you had mentioned, perhaps in 30 or 40 years, I'm guessing that also means it perhaps might never be required. So I am just questioning, regardless of your assertion that it does make sense from a construction engineering perspective to do it now. From a conservation perspective, I find it hard to rationalize disrupting an area that may never be required at all. And to disrupt further wetlands for a mitigation area as a result of the road that is going to be put in for an area that may never be used. So those are my two biggest concerns, but I do want to recognize that I appreciate the willingness of the applicant to do as much as they possibly can to mitigate impacts to the resource areas.
If I can address the idea about this may never be used, I often wind up, it seems, on a Saturday morning in my conference room, explaining to someone who's just purchased a lot in a subdivision that we've gotten approved, and showing them where they can put the house and where the septic is going to go. And I always make people two promises. I promise them that they will have to replace their roof and their septic system will fail. It's a question of when, not if. Again, everything we're proposing here is, well within the limits of the Wetlands Protection Act and what we can do. Again, we're disturbing under 1,500 square feet of wetlands and replicating a significantly larger wetlands area. I think it's prudent, and to construct the 18-foot wide access way now. And frankly, I will be surprised if the Board of Health will approve without it.
I mean, we're not talking about not approving the access or the area, right? We're just saying, or I'm just saying, I don't want to speak for anyone else, or actually not even saying, just questioning the need to construct it now because the reserve location will not be constructed right now, correct?
That's correct.
Right. So if we're only talking about a road to go nowhere or something that's going to be constructed later, why can't we also address the access to the reserve area when, based on your assertion that it will be required at that point?
I think you wind up in a situation where it's, in my view, if we were to do that, then the reserve area becomes illusory.
If it's approved in plan, though, it's not, right?
Well, there's what's on paper, and can you access the area on paper that's approved? If I'm just going to throw this out there, and Jeff, please jump in, Jen, jump in, anybody else. If that was acceptable to the Board of Health, okay, and I would also want to check with the DEP Southeast Regional Office and talk to Brett Rowe to see if it would be acceptable to DEP, if they would still accept this as a valid reserve area without the access way being built. I'll be happy to investigate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. If the reserve area is still on paper, then why couldn't also the reserve area access remain on paper and have both things approved when it is eventually needed, just not to disturb more than we need to at this present point in time, I guess, is the genesis for this question to be raised.
Yeah, Eric, I think from what I'm hearing from Mark is there's a concern that we find ourselves in a catch-22 situation just from the standpoint of permitting authorities. We don't want to agree to not construct the access road and then be told by the Board of Health that we have to construct the access road or they're not going to approve. So Jen, if you're able to, obviously we're not closing this hearing tonight, have a discussion with Joan about that. Because if Joan is okay with not approving it, so long as Mark runs down Brett Rowe at Mass DEP and he's okay with not constructing it now, then I think that we can accommodate you. But we just don't want to be in a perilous situation where obviously we're in that catch-22. So we need to investigate this and we're happy to do it. And it makes sense to do it. But
All
Jen,
right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Jeff.
If
And
you
Mark.
could talk to Joan, that would be helpful.
No, yes, I will. I spoke to her a couple times, but I think it might be better to have the comments in writing. But they would definitely want to begin with an approved crossing. So whatever the construction is for it, all of those details approved. And then I will clarify with her that it doesn't have to be done now, that it could be done when it's needed. And I guess we'll have to think through how that works as far as then getting the appropriate approvals to do the work when it's needed. So I'll do some work on that.
I don't think we even need to discuss that, right? Like
Right.
under law, whatever is required in some future time frame
Yeah.
to do that, we're obviously going to need to do it. So yeah, all right. But if it's on paper and it's approved on paper, hopefully we won't need to do anything, right? I mean, the whole point of approving it on paper is to say you can go ahead and construct this when it's time. So yeah, just clarify that, Jen. But we're happy to try to make that accommodation.
Okay. Brendan?
Yeah, so I mean, everything almost has been sent before. You know, this is a, very densely packed area that, you're taking out a lot of vegetation and all that. I really honestly do appreciate the effort with the buffer that, you guys are expecting to put it all the way around. I really do. And I share the concern, obviously, with the access road. I don't, I really am not seeing why we do need to build it now for something that may happen 30, 40 years down the road. We're going to be splitting this wetlands for some future cause. And, it's often, and I think it was even said today that, that maybe we should not be considering something that may happen down the road. But yeah, I think hopefully it will be acceptable that this is on paper. I just don't see why we need to do this. But also the replication area. I think I'd like to see it larger. It's really right now just about 115% of what you're proposing to build a road on. So I'd like to see that percentage bumped up. It would seem that there's a area in your proposed reserve septic place, just outside of it, maybe that could be accommodated. That's all.
And if we don't build the access road, there would be no need to replicate anything right now either. I suppose you would want that to occur in the future, but think about that.
Absolutely. I'm not saying you have to replicate it now. I'm just saying we would put it all here. This is what we want. Yeah. Oh yeah. We're not replicating anything. We're not building a road.
Yeah. And Jen, a solution to this could be in the ongoing conditions, right? Like with respect to the construction of the access road and the reserve area and the replication, if we identify those as ongoing conditions, then, then they're alive and accessible when and if it's necessary to construct all this. So just a thought.
Right. So, some sort of ongoing condition, but something that yeah, we
Yep.
can talk about how that would be worded. I wouldn't want to have something without somebody really reviewing it decades from now.
Of course.
Hi. Do we want to open this up to anybody in the audience?
Well, I do have a raised hand from Tony. I do think he's with the project.
Oh yes, Tony Esposito, he is.
Okay.
Anybody,
Tony, you're unmuted.
can anybody hear me?
Yes.
I just want to remind everybody that it would be prudent for the force main construction, which the crossing will be accommodating, will be constructed along Road A, and then where the crossing is planned to start from Road A, it doesn't really become a crossing until it crosses the wetland line, that I recommend that we be allowed to stub out the force main off the roadway in preparation if this crossing is not constructed. The other thing I wanted to say is if we're going to increase replication around the area of the reserve area, that we have to honor Title V setbacks on that. And also, it was taught to me by some very intelligent wetlands people that in order to provide a replication area, proof that it's, 3 sides of it would be wetland, the actual wetlands would be on 3 sides of it to help it grow. And I may not be able, or we may not be able to replicate as much as we can in that area. Just by going by how the wetland line is going in that area. Just took a quick look at it. Brad may correct me, of course, but that's all I've got. As far as fencing is concerned, up on that property line, there is a retaining wall proposed up there as well. So the fence is provided for safety reasons as well. Just to let you know, because there are.
Tony, what's the height of the retaining wall?
It ranges from 1.5 feet to about 5 feet, 4.5.
Is Frank, are you aware of whatever the building code requirement is on having to provide?
It does seem like I was looking at that earlier, and I could see the difference between the proposed grade and the existing grade, and I agree in a lot of places it's a good 6 feet, which.
So I think that, the way we can do this is agree to a split rail unless in certain circumstances a more robust fence is required by the building code.
It might be, Jeff or Tony, whatever, yeah, to consider, Penny or our concern is for wildlife, but if you've already got a 6-foot retaining wall, it's not exactly like a lot of things are going to run through it. So there could be that the code compliant retaining wall pertains to the areas where the wall exceeds a certain height, if it's 4 feet or 3 feet, whatever's required, that it could be a less restrictive fence. When you get off to, like, if you go left of unit 12, you start to look at where the grade meets the grade of the off-site property. It goes from 98 to 92. If I get that right. So it could be that the chain link fence doesn't need to be the full length of the retaining wall,
Right.
which I think might be the better solution. And then the lesser part, if they want to have a split rail fence or something for that, but maybe that the chain link fence only be at the location where it's required. And at that point, I don't think it's going to be really detrimental environmentally. That's my own opinion.
Tony, can you look at that, Tony, and maybe we could hone that a little better on whatever the final plan looks like?
Devin or Jen, do you have a comment on that? I mean,
No, we just, letting us know what you're doing would be good. And,
well, I think if we say that we don't want a chain link fence in areas where it's not required, would be part of that, our stipulation. But yeah, maybe you can just clean it up so it's on the right plan, then we don't have to think about it.
I like doing it by a condition.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Because the building code could change over time. So it's almost like, it's better to just kind of take care of it with language. But anyway, my 2 cents.
Devin has her hand up if we want to
Yeah.
hear her comment on it.
Sure.
Yeah, if I may. So my recommendation, I agree with Jeff that it's great to have as a condition, but my recommendation is to always have it on the plans, as you are going to construct it to the maximum extent practicable. So if you have a proposed chain link fence call out leader on there, I would just change it to a split rail fence. And just so that way, as Jen states it in her order of conditions and it's covered there, it's also on the plan that's referenced with said order.
Okay,
It's best
a
to
good
just
idea.
make those revisions and changes on the plan while you have to, especially because we aren't closing this evening. It just, you might as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. Call it a split rail all the way through, and then have language in the condition that says something to the effect of, to the extent the building code requires the split rail to be, a fully enclosed fence, the applicant shall do that. And I think that's a good idea, Devin. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We open this up, anybody in the audience? We let Mr. Esposito in. He's part of the project. We have, any hands up?
Yes, we do. We do have one about her,
And anybody that
O'Reilly.
wants to, speak, just we need your name and address for the record, please.
So I'm unmuting O'Reilly.
Hi, it's Liz O'Reilly. Can you hear
Good
me?
evening. Yep, good
Hi.
evening, Liz.
Hi, we're at 179 Maple Street. We abut the backside of the project down by the reserve septic. It's been spoken to and addressed, but I can't understand why a road needs to be built with a pipe under it, leading out to something that we may not use for 30 years. Over the last 30 years, we can see how the technology has changed in storage in this area. What's it going to be like 30 years from now? And to disrupt this area, put a pipe in and an 18-foot road, it just doesn't make sense to me. When we could just leave it the way it is, put it on the plans. Yeah, that's the reserve area, and we agree to that. But I just don't understand why a road has to be built with a pipe to a place that may never be used. Doesn't make sense financially or environmentally. My other question is, I didn't realize that by units, let's see, 20 to 23, there's a retaining wall in back of those. Is there also a retaining wall in back of the units right on Old Oka Bucket, units 1 through 4? And if there are retaining walls on those, there is the one I know on 20 to 23. What's the rationale for a retaining wall in an open area that's, it's been open like that for years? Why can't it just remain open?
The applicant want to speak to that?
Tony,
I'm
you
over
want,
at 123.
Okay, well, so 123, is there a retaining wall there? Am I seeing that in the back of that goes up to the where the access road was going to be started?
yeah, there's a retaining wall there, Tony.
Okay, and
Yeah.
then there's one over on 20 to 23.
Yep, there is.
Why are there retaining walls there?
20 to 23 because of the grading and the need for a backyard.
What about 1 through 4? What's the need there, Tony?
There is a common drive for those units that go up against that retaining wall for access to those units.
So
the access for the units are through the development.
Right.
They're not from
The
old
street.
open road.
So the retaining wall has a structural purpose. It's holding in earth. Is that it? Whether it be earth that's supporting a road or earth that's supporting a grade or a lawn or something to that effect?
Yes, the driveway has to be graded just so it's drivable, and there's a drop off there.
And how high is that retaining wall from 1 to 4?
At the corner of the Grant property, it's 4 feet.
Having lived here since 85 in this
There
area,
is-
that area is very wet. So I just wonder where the water's going to go.
The water is being handled by drainage on site.
Okay.
So the roadway is going to have catch basins, which are going to bring the water to infiltration chambers
Mhm.
elsewhere. Am I correct, Tony?
Yes, there's a proposed catch basin 6 located in front of Unit 1.
And
Okay.
and then the homes that are units 20 through 23,
Yeah.
those are going to catch water on their roofs and infiltrate it directly adjacent to the homes, right?
Yes, those particular drainage are between, that particular drainage system is between the
23.
units itself.
Okay. So there's an actual infiltration chamber system near those homes, is what you're
Yeah.
saying?
I could see
Yes.
that.
Okay.
And one of the things in design infiltration, you have to have a certain, 2 to 4 feet of separation for the water table, which raises the site in some locations.
Okay.
Most of the locations. So in order for the infiltration to work, it has to be above the water table, and thus you grade the side higher.
So Liz, is your concern stormwater management? Is that the concern, or is your concern the aesthetic of
Mostly the concern of the water, because the area where I can see there's the tank area, that like checkerboard area next to Unit 1.
Yep.
Is that where it's going to flow into? It says 100 by 70, right next to Unit 1, right
Yep.
near the branch property.
That is a grade, that's not the dimensions.
Okay, but is that the area where the water's going to be held?
Yes,
Where's the water going to be held?
there for the driveway.
Okay, because
The
that area
individual units have their
Yeah,
own pool.
try to talk one at a time, just so we clear.
to give you an example, next to Unit 1, I've seen people ice skate there in the winter, and that's wet. And the branch property next door, she pumps water 24/7 out of her basement already because the land next to her is so wet. And I'm just concerned as this all moves, and the house next to me, 175, her backyard is flooding more than it ever did.
So Jen, as part of this project, were you given the comments, the final comments from Merrill Engineering with respect to their review of stormwater in connection with this project during the zoning hearing?
No.
Okay, because that's available to you, Jen, if you
Yep.
want to see that. But that would be my only comment to the commission right now, would be that the stormwater management system has been thoroughly vetted and reviewed. And so I suppose, certainly it's within your purview to ask questions, and we'll try and answer them as best we can, but you know, it's kind of an issue that's been engineered, reviewed, and decided on.
Mhm. And the water tables have changed even more since I moved here. But I've seen them change in the last 2 years. So that's my concern is how, you know, I can look at that, what you're saying. Is that with the zoning? Is that who has that? Because as you know, I was at all those meetings.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's for the commission's the zoning hearing was I'm very proud of the zoning hearing because it went, we listened to concerns
Mhm.
of everybody, and we really changed the plans to
Yes,
try to accommodate all of it. It was a very much a collaborative process,
right.
and we certainly want to continue to be collaborative. I just am pointing out that there's kind of like, um, I think that you might find some of the answers to your stormwater questions have already been answered
Okay.
in connection with that hearing and that review. And the review of the commission at the moment, it is, you know, their review is not as comprehensive as it typically would be
Mhm.
because of this process.
Right. And I will say you have worked well with the abutters. Very happy that it's down to 24 single family homes as opposed to the 32 townhouse, 32 units. But my main concern with getting the abutters notice for the conservation was this road. It just does not make sense to me in any way, shape, or form to put something in, disrupt an area for something that may happen in 30 years. And, I'm very agreeable that, yeah, that is the reserve area. I have no problem with that, but I just can't wrap my head around the rationalization.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully we can get a good answer to that, and hopefully that answer is we don't need to do the road right now.
That would be great.
Yep, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. We have any other from the audience?
I do not see any other hands raised for abutters. I'm assuming we want to look to a continuance date.
Yeah, can I just, a few questions, my own, and I think that's a good idea, Jeff. We didn't look hard at the stormwater, and I'm not sure we're gonna really dig into it, but it would be good to hear on a couple of things with regard to that. Is to Liz's point, there's quite a bit of displacement of material. Do we know roughly how many yards of material? Somebody's got to have an idea of how much material is being brought onto this site to construct this.
I don't. I would have to punt that question to Mark and Tony.
Yeah, Tony, do we have the number?
I believe, I'm looking for my cut and fill calculation.
Well,
Oh,
while you're looking,
yeah, you can look for that one.
Yeah, well, we'll provide, obviously, we're making a list here, and we'll provide that as part of our response. I just,
Because that what I'm seeing, Jeff, I mean, when it's like units 12 through 18, in order to build those, you're talking about like you're going to be removing some material, but you're going to be adding fill 6 feet deep, 6 to 8 feet deep in a pretty substantial area. This a little bit less on the units 23, 20, 22, 21, but still that whole area is being elevated considerably.
I mean, Frank, the only thing I'm going to say is this has been reviewed by ZBA.
I
and
understand.
I don't want to get into a redesign of the engineering of this.
I'm just looking at this with regards to the impact to the wetlands. The ZBA can look at that and they can look at the engineering and say if their purview is the stormwater, our purview is the wetlands. And so when you bring in that much material and do all of these things, how does it adversely affect the wetlands that surround it?
Can
And,
I,
yep.
can I respond? So again, the kind of an overview here for every one of these houses. We are collecting all the roof runoff, okay, from every one of these houses, which will be funneled into subsurface chambers, okay, which will eventually filter down through the soil to the water table. Okay, the basic tenet of engineering for any project, whether it's this project or one single family home, is you cannot increase peak flow runoff. Okay, so you've got the site as it exists today. That gets analyzed for drainage. Okay, a report gets generated, and then we have post-development. Okay, so we have to be able to prove, and did prove to Deb Keller at Merrill Engineers, that we are not increasing any runoff from this site. Okay, so what's going into the wetlands now, there will be no increase, even though we are bringing in fill. Okay, there's drainage mitigation design, okay, that is taking that area, okay, that increase, because we have, obviously, we have increase in pervious area, okay. The drainage mitigation design is done so that at the end of the day, there is still no increase in peak flow runoff. So that means no increase in peak flow runoff to the wetlands.
Okay, I get that. I guess my question is more a question of hydrology and protecting the wetlands. You have an intermittent stream on the east side, right?
Yep.
And
Yes.
then you
Yep.
have a wetlands to the west side of that. And you're altering this whole area from the time you leave Old Oaken Bucket Road till you get up to Unit 18. So has, in the consideration of this project, has anyone looked at the hydrology of this, the impact on the hydrology of this site?
That was part of Merrill's review.
All right, well, that's the part I'd like to see and review that, because that's would be my, I understand that the runoff from the roofs, the runoff from the road, all that can be introduced back into this. But my kind of basic piece is that there's a large wetlands here, and how will this impact that wetland with regard to the hydrology on it is something that I'd like to see from Merrill. With regard to the wetlands crossing, I think I'm on the same page as most of you, that if it doesn't, I understand the catch-22. If one commission or board wants it or requires it, the other one doesn't want it. I just see that, I'm assuming that this initial septic system is going to last for 20 years or something. So in 20 years, you're going to be filing for a new septic system anyways. Any kind of orders we have here, you're going to have to come back to the commission regardless. So I really don't see the need to build out this wetlands crossing and disturb another area if it's not necessary. And I understand Mr. Esposito wanting to at least construct the line on part of that to bring it off the road and to a point where it could get connected at some point. That makes perfect sense. But beyond that, I don't really see the need for that until the time comes. Hopefully, they won't have to do that at all. They can do some other alternative.
There, if I may, there's not only what the Board of Health thinks, but again, if it's okay with DEP.
Yep.
And
Well,
it's okay.
I get it. I understand both of those. And then I guess I am still not quite sure that it needs to be. I know that you're thinking 18 feet because of equipment, but most excavators, haul trucks, all that stuff go over the road. So they're maybe 8 to 9 feet wide. I would think something 12 feet wide would be sufficient to get to that site. I just don't see why it has to have an extra area.
We can look into that further, Frank, but you know, if we're doing it on paper, it probably makes sense to do it wider. And then again, there could be language in the order that captures the intention of what you want, which is, you know, this is drawn to be 18 feet in width. And to the extent feasible in the future, should there be a need to construct it, we request the applicant to consider a lesser width.
Sure.
You know, just to kind of document it for
Okay.
some future person.
Well, I think we're kind of all knocking it around, so we don't need to belabor it, but let's find out what's required. And then the erosion control and the marking of certain areas. I mean, it's going to be pretty well delineated where these retaining walls are. There's not much going to change there, but in areas where we can have any additional vegetation or whatever, we certainly appreciate the applicant's plan to enhance that as much as possible, I guess is the best way to describe that. You know, we've experienced these issues before with these projects where they're so close to the wetlands and then folks need to move further, but with the fencing there or the retaining wall, that should limit encroachment into the wetland.
Do you, Frank, do you expect to have Lucas Environmental review any additional submittal, or are we at a small enough list now where we can kind of eliminate that procedure, so to speak? You feel like you guys have a good enough handle on it where we can just kind of eliminate the need for another round of peer review?
I think we would want to have another review. I mean, maybe I would feel differently if we didn't have so many things on the list right now, but given the number of filings, it's very helpful.
We'll try to limit that review, Jeff, to minimal, to minimize that.
I'd appreciate that, because you know you're talking.
No, we want to pare it down. We don't want to expand it. We want to, if we've had the opportunity to review it, look at it, talk about that. So I don't think we need to expand on it, but it wouldn't be bad. It would certainly be beneficial for the commission to have Lucas reviewing the responses and whatnot. So
Okay, and I'll let you guys. Do you want me to find this report from Merrill, or Jen? Do you want to do that?
I have the report from Merrill.
Okay, great.
But Jeff, if you can maybe talk to Merrill or whoever and look specifically towards the hydrology piece of that, what was reviewed with that would be helpful.
Yeah. See if we can point you in the direction of where this. Yep.
Okay.
All right. I personally would be thrilled if we could continue this not into the new year. So if there's a way to do that, I'd appreciate that.
We are already putting things on the January agenda.
All the more reason not to. I'm just kidding.
So
Okay.
it's January 6th, January 27th.
What other project of yours do you want to drop from the agenda, Jeff, so we can
Well, we just yeah.
we'll throw it back to you. How's
I understand the issues.
All right.
So January 6th?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And if
Can I
you
make a
can
motion, Frank?
Wait, hold on a
Well, I
second.
was just gonna say, if you can include me in any correspondence with DEP, that would be helpful to make sure we all have the same info.
Sure, we can do that.
Jen, likewise as well.
And with the Board of Health, let's do it both ways.
Yes.
So, Okay. Good enough.
Okay.
So all right, Penny, it's your turn.
January 6th, I make a motion, we continue. My cat's attacking me. Old Oaken Bucket until January 6th.
Okay, we have a motion, a second.
I second that.
Brendan, all in favor, Eric?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. At least all you had was 4 members to have to deal with tonight, so.
Yeah, my heartfelt apologies to Heather and everyone else behind us. And to, we tried to take care of it as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
On we're gonna go this RDA.
Yes, please.
So on November 25th, 2024, 6 p.m. the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws for requested determination of applicability filed by Heather Marshall for foundation repair and an elevation of a single-family home located at 17 Nelson Road. Scituate abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend, and information is available on the agenda posted on the website. Okay, good evening.
Good evening, members of the commission. Brad Holmes on behalf of ECR here, and also on behalf of Heather Rose Marshall, if you could promote her as well.
Yes.
We filed an RDA application for Heather's property at 17 Nelson Road. The site contains a single-family home, a paved driveway, existing studio, and a yard area. It's a smaller lot at the end of Nelson Road, and there is a bordering vegetative wetland located off-site beyond the stone wall. So we're well within the 100-foot and 50-foot buffer zone to the off-site BVW. A few years ago, we did have a notice of intent with an order of conditions to do a improvement project to the home. We were increasing the footprint, and that triggered us to file a notice of intent. This project has been revised so that there is no increase in the structure footprint. This is a single-family home improvement where we'll be raising up or elevating the house to put a new foundation and reconstructing the second floor. So we'll be working within the existing footprint. I did get some coordination back with Jen about some site details. There is a proposed silt fence shown on the plan, but I think we could be better served with a silt sock closer in within the lawn area, and I've designated that there in the brown line. And there's also a paved driveway that comes into the property that Heather tends to remove and restore with gravel. So that we're taking away that paved driveway. So overall, it's all within the same footprint. There's no structure increase. So therefore, it's somewhat exempt, but not exempt because we are working in the buffer zone, and we're looking to get the commission support on that. I'll turn it over to Heather. She can explain the project a little bit more as a registered architect.
Yeah. Hi, guys. This is Heather Marshall, 17 Nelson Road. I am the architect and also the homeowner. We had, like Brad said, come to you guys for a couple years ago. We were going to rebuild the house. Well, the interest rates and construction costs have changed our projects. So now we are just renovating and rebuilding the second floor. Our current house is an old 1925 beach house. It's up on piers with a crawl, with the skirt around the foundation. So we cannot build a second floor without putting in a proper foundation. So that's why we're looking to lift the home. It's right now like 5 feet off the ground. We're looking to bring it up to the 7.6 just so we can get a full walkout floor. The first floor will be a slab on grade. We are not excavating into the ground. We're keeping it at the grade. We're just simply lifting the house and then rebuilding the second floor. And that's pretty much it. Brad covered the whole driveway. Our driveway's been beat up. We are at the bottom of the hill. all the water, sheds down the road and goes into the wetlands. So our intent is to get rid of the paved driveway and just put a crushed stone dust or a gravel, something that's pervious to allow the water to roll through. And that's pretty much it. And if you guys have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. Jen?
I am happy to see the limit of work on the plan and the information sort of showing where the driveway is. I have what I need for this project. I would say we could do it this way.
Okay. Brendan?
I have no questions on this.
Eric?
Yeah, no questions, but appreciate the change in surface for the driveway. Thanks.
Penny?
Hold on. Where is she?
Looking good, sorry.
Okay. Take a motion.
I make a motion for a -3.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't have any other comments other than what we already had, and what got changed around seems like good. We're saying the driveway is going to be gravel. Is that
Yes, a stone dust or a
a
gravel.
stone dust or something?
Yeah,
Other-
I'm leaning towards stone dust only for like shoveling and things like that.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. So I have a motion.
Any abutters or?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks, Jen. Got a little late after the last one. Anybody else in the audience on this project?
I don't see anybody.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll make a motion for a -3.
And I
Thank
will
you.
second that.
From Brendan, all in favor, Eric?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. What do we have to move along through fairly quickly?
The
Open
certificate of-
space.
Okay.
Open space was the first one. Penny?
I don't even know where I'm at right now. Eric and I had a conversation about Mordecai Lincoln. In the field and the wildflowers and so forth and so on. And much to my surprise, the price is much higher than I thought. I was gonna do it out of my own pocket, but I sure ain't now. Anyways, Eric could explain it to you better, but I would like a little more funding so we could, I'm gonna spread it myself, but I do need to get the seed, to get that meadow up and running, to be very environmentally friendly next year to butterflies, native bees, and the little critters out there. Eric, could you explain to them about the?
Yeah, so the seed mix that I sent to Penny, I sent two different types. One was from New England Wetland Plants. That one was at $86 a pound. The other one was from Ernst Ecologic Seed. That was at close to $56 a pound. In addition to what Penny had mentioned, it's also important to introduce species that will outcompete some of the problematic plant life there, specifically the field plantain and some of the legacy turfgrass species that remain from it having been mowed for who knows how long. And the idea is to introduce this wildflower seed mix to the seed bank to hopefully start the process of naturalizing this into a more meadow-like setting rather than a post-mowed sort of lawn type field habitat. So Penny's right, it's not exactly the cheapest. I think the most aggressive seed that we could source is from Ernst that would better outcompete some of the existing aggressive plant material in that field. Perhaps the more desirable seed blend, though, ultimately is from New England wetland plants. Conveniently, for cost savings, the Ernst and more aggressive seed is the cheaper of the two. Ideally, that would be spread before winter, just because of some of the germination requirements on some of the native seed, but understanding logistics and economics, that might not be possible.
Okay. I was gonna say something. Oh, and it is, board, a one-shot deal, right? They should come back every year. It isn't as though I'm gonna be coming every year asking for this funding, right, Eric? I hope.
Right. No, that's correct. I mean, everything that is in these mixes are perennial seeds. So the only variable is the success rate of the seed that's being applied relative to the competition from the existing vegetation.
So Eric, it sounds like it makes more sense to put the seed down. It seems late in the season, but if it makes the most sense to do this, is this a seed mix that would acquire and then get somebody to put it into a hydro seeder?
No.
As opposed to just spreading it on the, or can you spread it? I don't even know how big an area we're talking about.
It's just under an acre. I just used the near map measurement tool to get the square footage. I think it's coming in at like 41,000 square feet or something like that. And what I proposed to Penny was the cheapest of all the options without doing significant site work or remediation of the existing vegetation. This is probably the lowest impact route in terms of labor or potential machine. It wouldn't hurt to do a hydro seed type thing, but that would also require a low mow prior to. So that's just going to increase costs. So in the sense of, economics, I propose the bare minimum, lowest effort, but also has the most variable success rate. So I think that's where the happy medium comes.
So we'd basically just take the seed, spread it directly on the ground.
A spreader, right?
Yeah,
correct.
But the seed would just get spread, as opposed to say cutting this down really short and like hydro. And the success rate you don't think would change a lot between doing it with the hydro seed? You think should be okay?
I mean, I would still recommend a cut prior to the application. Just for coverage sake, I think that hydro seed would certainly help because it would increase the potential germination and holding on to moisture throughout the winter. And that's what I'm referring to when it comes to the germination success. A lot of these native seeds need cold periods through the winter in order to be able to germinate come the springtime. So if we applied it in the spring after a mow, we might not get any germination until spring of 26. So
Gotcha.
just in the interest of trying to expedite the potential germination, it would be best applied sooner than later.
Okay. So Penny, I mean, we had Costello before with his machine could mow that, get it down to within 6 inches, something like that. And then just go over it with a spreader. How many pounds of seed are we talking?
Well, we're talking about $1,000 on seed.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah,
Eric?
the recommended rate was around 20 pounds per acre. So it would be 20 pounds, I would recommend. I mean, being slightly over is definitely better than being slightly under.
Okay. No, I'd rather get it to a good job with it. So, I mean, we could help you spread it, but maybe we would want to get the seed ordered and get Costello to mow it.
Well, that's what I'm asking you to give me permission.
So can that go? Is that though a CPC thing to do that? Is that part of the project there or not?
No, the field is not part of the vista pruning, the driveway. Yeah, I wish it was, Frank, but it
Okay,
isn't.
no, that's all right. I just,
Because I didn't know we were gonna make a meadow when you know,
okay. And then Eric, is this something that once it's vegetated like that, that we can mow it like once or twice a year?
once.
I would recommend annual at the most frequent.
Okay.
So every year maximum, but I would even say we could do a rotational mowing. So maybe the first year we do one area, then the second year we do another area, the third
Okay.
year we do a third area, and then on the fourth year we go back to what we did the first year.
Cool. So we just want to keep the briars and all that sort of stuff from getting
Right.
overtaken.
And any trees or woody material, but the idea is to allow those perennials to go to seed for
Yeah.
successive years to try and increase the seed bank of those perennials in that meadow, which is why you wouldn't want to do the entire thing in one year or do the entire field every year.
Gotcha. Okay. So how much money, Penny, do you think?
Well, I don't know what it would cost to mow it, but Eric, we're looking at $1,100 for the seed.
Plus or minus a few bucks, yeah. I mean, at 20 pounds per acre for $56 a pound, that's not including shipping or potential tax. I don't know how that works with Ernst, but just product alone, it would be 11.20.
So you're looking at maybe, and if you have to mow it, you might be talking about another $1,000. So you're talking to 2,500.
Yeah, I guess.
And where would that come from?
Jen.
We'll have to look at which, what group of money we take it out of.
We have some funds in some various conservation accounts
yeah.
that we could do that with. We're gonna use up a lot of that. We have I think we're gonna talk about it in a second, but
yeah,
we get a good price. We have we have a bid for the Driftway Park, which I'd like to move along on. So
yes,
we'll have to see where we are. But I think if that makes the most sense there, I guess the other alternative is that we don't plant it for another season, but I don't know why we wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, when I made the proposal to Penny, I didn't know what the funding was for the remainder of the year in our conservation budget. And if it does make sense, we could push it off till next fall and see what happens through not mowing again next year. Maybe there are other species that weren't able to come up this year, in which case I would advocate for doing nothing until maybe September of 25.
Penny's not buying green bananas anymore. So I think she wants this thing done.
well, it's just I've got J Michaels. I have their contract. I'm going to get Jim Bordeaux to sign tomorrow for the bittersweet removal and the vista pruning. So it would be nice to have it all kind of buttoned up, but you know, I don't want to get pushy-washy. I don't want to take away from Driftway Park.
Right.
That's for sure. Those funds are there. But I do think we have some other stuff that has been sitting for years for maintenance.
Yeah, so can we just propose this? If we could get a motion to expend, say, a max $2,500
Okay.
to seed the field, provided we have adequate funding. Will that work for everybody?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we I don't know what you just said, Frank.
She motioned what I just said. So
yeah,
we got it. Josh has got it. We have a second from somebody.
Second what you just said.
And all in favor, Eric?
I am in favor.
And Frank. It's getting silly. It's 9:00. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. So the Driftway Park, Jen and myself met with folks from J. Michael. I think we got a good bid together. It's like it's about $20,000 for a pretty nice upgrade of the Driftway Park, dealing with wet areas, bad trails, drainage, and all that stuff. We need to get out there and maybe do a site walk and confirm what these bids are, but it's within what we've gotten funded. We've told the select board that that was our plan, was to get this, they allocated us money to do this. We've been talking about the Driftway Park being a priority, and I don't see that we can do much more. We have an opportunity to get this done, in colder months. And so I think we should move along with it. We can get the proposal out to all of you if you want to see it. We did this working with Paul Scott. He came up with sort of a scope of work, and Jen, Paul, and I walked it, and then walked it with the folks from J. Michael, and I think we're pretty much ready to move on it.
You want a motion on that?
Anybody have any questions? It's
No
good to wait until.
questions, but
Go ahead.
But happy to hear that everything's going forward, and it sounds like it's going to be a good project. So congrats on that.
Thanks. So you wait till 9 o'clock and everybody's pretty numb. So it's a good.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna make a motion that we move forward with the Driftway Park project of getting it squared away.
Thank you, Penny. How about a second?
I'll second that.
There we go, Brendan. All in favor, Eric?
I say aye.
Frank, yes, thank you. Kind of punch drunk here. All right. What about what else we got? Certificate of compliance, Jen. Sorry.
Yep. So they look good for 90 and vinyl. That's Curtis Estates. 75 Surfside is an old one. It was a septic back then. Now they're on sewer. So that's how old it is. And then 7173 Glades Road. That's the duplex kind of next to the parking lot. That was a
Right.
septic project.
Right.
Okay.
So those were all good, right?
And then I guess the other thing to vote on, if you want to, is a request for an extension for an ORAD. It's 119 Man Hill Road and 390 Hatherley Road. They have had one extension, so this is their second one.
Is this the last one we give?
I mean, we haven't done more than two before for an ORAD, especially with no proposed work or anything like that. So I guess the question is, do you want to do 1 year or 2 years?
I think a couple of years is fine. I don't think that's changing much, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's my
So
own
I'll make a
opinion.
motion that we give an extension to 119 Man Hill and 390 Hatherley Road of 2 years.
Yep.
I'll second that.
All in favor, Eric?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Crescent Ave.
Yep. So I guess I do want to say for Crescent Ave, they have filed an amendment to their orders, which actually, Josh, I'm not sure if you can bring up the plan I just saved in the folder. And I don't know if you want to hear a little bit about it, but I just want to make sure we're okay with hearing this as an amendment at our next meeting.
As an
So Jen, I've got the plan, the paper plan, while Josh is pulling it up. So I don't see much on this plan for any information on these walls. It just calls them as existing walls, which they were not conditioned. So we don't have any elevation or any detail.
I think that's coming today. They emailed one just a couple hours ago with some more information on it.
They also, and then this driveway with the grading. I mean, this house is not the same elevation of the house that was proposed.
No.
So, I mean, I think it needs more information. I don't think they're giving us a whole plan of what they're trying to do here. I just don't see how some of this actually works. So they can do that. I think an amendment's the appropriate, as opposed to a new filing. I mean, I'm not happy about this at all, but we already have a set of orders and they've started on the site. So as long as it gets advertised correctly and we get the information, but they're still they're lacking in information. And we want to make sure that Deb Keller's got enough time to review this before the meeting, because I don't want to have this at the next meeting and then not have the information we need to make a decision, or give the folks around it enough time to take a look at it.
So we
Agreed.
need to get the information before we schedule it.
So if we're gonna amend the orders, we need to advertise this just like a regular a notice of intent, right?
Correct. Abutters get notified, legal ad gets placed.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So if there's enough time for all that, then that's fine.
But they can't do any work, right, until we get this settled.
I don't think so.
I don't
mean,
either.
they've been asking about getting started with
know.
the framing, but framing a house that's at a total different plan than what we got. I mean, maybe it's similar footprint, but elevations have changed, so the whole yard is going to change.
Yeah.
So I don't see the point in moving this forward until we have that information.
Yeah, I agree. This whole thing has been unpleasant given the way that it materialized. And I think that until we have all the information, I mean, we thought we did before this project even started, and clearly we didn't, because they just went off and did their own thing. So I would like to see all of the information presented to us before any other work commences.
Yeah.
What do you think, Brendan?
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll touch base with the engineer and the builder tomorrow and make sure they know everything we need so we can review it.
Once we get it, review it, we'll see. Okay, minutes. Can I move on?
Yeah.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes of November 4th, and June 3rd. As written.
Josh is working in both directions.
I know, God love him.
All right. I get a motion from Penny, a second from anybody?
I'll second that.
There we go.
Thank you.
Eric?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Great.
Okay.
What else?
Frank, we do have a hand raised.
Hand raised. Where?
From Steve Bjorklund.
I saw his hand up earlier, but I think he was just waiting on Vinyl Road.
Okay.
I think. Either that or he fell asleep at the computer and was just.
All right. Do you want me to ask him to unmute, see if he has a comment?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
I am unmuted, correct?
You are correct.
Okay, there we go. No, you were almost right, Frank, but, and thank you guys for that. But I just wanted to say, when you were going through the seed mix that you need for the field out at Mordecai Lincoln Road.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, I do not presently have a project in front of the Conservation Commission, but I would be willing, if the commission was amenable to donating $500 towards the seed, if the commission would like that, if they accept it.
Penny?
Oh, I'll accept any donation.
That's very thoughtful, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
If the commission votes that, I'd be glad to stop in tomorrow and give Jen a check.
All in favor of Penny? You want to make a motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we accept a generous donation of $500 towards the seed mix from Mr. Stephen Bjorklund.
Second?
I will second that.
All in favor, Eric
Yes.
and Frank, yes. Thank you very much, Steve.
Sure, and I
Thank
hope
you,
the field
Stephen.
comes out, and you can get it done this year. That sounds great.
I think I'm gonna get a picture of you and Penny running through that field when it's
Well, Frank, as you know, I served on the CPC years ago before most of the people were in here, so it would have been nice if it was the CPC, but if it helps the commission, I'm glad to help as well.
Thank you. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
We know that's going to be a nice, it is a good project, and Penny's been working tirelessly at that, and we appreciate that as well.
That's
So
great. Thanks,
thank
guys.
you. Thank you.
Oh, I thank Stephen. That was very nice. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And
Yeah.
can we adjourn now?
Oh, we're waiting for a motion for Christ's
Oh,
sake.
okay. I make a motion, we adjourn.
And a second,
I second that.
Eric,
Yes.
most definitely, and Frank, yes. You all have a nice Thanksgiving. Thanks for
Thank you.
bearing with
Have a
it
happy
tonight.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Happy
Good night
Thanksgiving to everyone too.
as well.
Bye.
Thank
Good
you
night.
all. Bye-bye.